So I work with light and other mediums, but light primarily in the design of installations and experiences. But however, before the sharing session, I would like to caveat that the light is a tool, and I would like to share more about the processes and my approaches with working with the medium and how it has allowed me to learn more about how we perceive and interact with light and space. So actually, even though the session is titled Light as Sensorium, I actually would like to highlight the different ways we approach perception in the, as Johan mentioned, the body of works that I work with. So I'll be sharing 3 bodies of work today, and then maybe the last part of the session would be more about live atmospheres or world building for live night events, aka raves. Oh, and I think it'll be nice to keep this session like chill and informal. So like at any point after any body of work is shared, if you have any immediate curiosities, just let me know. So as Johan has given the introduction, I think I said that twice, but my background is actually in interactive media. So I did my Bachelor's of Fine Arts from the School of Art, Design, Media in NTU. So my practice involves creating installations and experience that explore new dimensions of sensory perception. Big words, but maybe I'll break it down a bit later. So I work across mediums of light, projection, sometimes sound, and then haptics, as I'll share a bit more later, because my interest is in the physical and the intangible materials and the quality of such materiality. So I'll also incorporate interactive technology, such as like different sensors and different interactive, yeah, with different modalities through the development of devices and interfaces. Yeah. So before we move on, I would like to pose the question of what frames our perception and how do we experience like the world around us through our senses. So what is sensory perception? There's this human geographer called 𝙑𝙬𝚂𝙱𝙴, and he, in his book, Space and Place, he talks about the experiential perspective. And that is his way of perhaps simplifying the way we experience the world around us. So the most direct and passive way is sensation. So it's how we receive stimuli with our 5 senses, like vision, hearing, touch, taste, and smell. And then there is perception, which is in between sensation and conception, which is something that we all partake in the active process of doing, which is construct the perception based on the stimuli that we receive based on experience, so how we have lived through and the different spaces, or from we are young, how we have gained information and gained conclusions about different things around us. So sometimes our brain actually skips certain processes so that we don't get overloaded with data. So there are quite a few processes that would be nice to be made aware of when we think about how we experience the world around us. So actually one of my first few explorations is the project Tactility of Light. Is actually my thesis project. So it explores this question whether something immaterial, such as light, can be touched. And obviously there's a very direct answer to this question. I mean, having lived our lives knowing that light is intangible. So, okay. But I think through our different ways of approaching materiality, so exploring the concept of light perhaps as material, I wanted to explore whether a new way of interacting with this medium can be done through the haptic modality or additive devices. So maybe sharing some concept or theory behind the project is that when we consider physical objects, we can describe their material qualities and know how they feel because we have experienced touching objects in different textures through our experience. And we can also link the visual qualities of such materials to certain material qualities. So over time, material perception is actually the process of perceiving and recognizing a material, surface quality, or internal state of an object based on sensory stimuli, such as visual, tactile, and auditory sensation. So like, for example, certain things like depth. You can perceive depth when you hear the sound of an object falling, perhaps something like that. So this process has been developed since we're young. And then tactile qualities is then touching upon what we mentioned about connection, whether you like or dislike touching a certain object. And actually that is the tail end part of the experiential perspective. So actually, with intangible materials, our only experience with light is through our sight. We actually never really touched light before. But because of this process of material perception, what we are postulating is that using certain visual qualities or certain visual properties of light, can we then translate what we know or what we can measure of light into something haptic? Yeah. Okay, so through this project Tactility of Light, I developed this pair of haptic gloves, which is a wearable haptic device that with light censored based tactile feedback on your fingertips. So it's actually converting the intensity of light to this direct source of vibration on your fingertips when you wear these gloves. So actually, haptic is actually available, it's everywhere or prevalent in all the technologies that we know, like such as your phones. And actually, I was made aware of haptics actually when I was doing my exchange in Stockholm. And I had the experience of holding or coding this haptic device that allows you to interact with virtual objects on a screen. So let's say if your cursor is, let's say there's a virtual sphere on the screen, and when your cursor is near there, when you interact with this haptic device, you can actually feel the quality by them simulating what it will be like to touch the object. So the base idea of the haptic gloves was developed from there. So because actually for the haptic gloves, it is quite a simple mechanism. It's a direct link between the intensity of light and how strong the haptic feedback is. So actually, if we consider light as object, there are many different textures and many different forms of objects. So through this installation, another consideration is how these light forms can be presented and experienced or touched within a space. So maybe to make things easier, I'll share a video of the installation. So actually in this installation, there are two rooms. One is the projection room, and then the other is presenting like solid light forms using lighting fixtures so that you can feel different qualities and textural qualities through the glass. And then in the space, there is also a moving head beam. Yep. Okay, maybe I'll just skip this. Okay, so as I explained before, this is just some um, background or some behind the scenes of the exhibition itself. So with these wearable gloves, it's actually when I was developing it for my thesis project, it was quite DIY. So the viewers have to wear this crossbody bag with the mechanism in it, and then it's connected directly to the controller with these gloves. But we tried, I tried to design it as seamless as possible so that it's you can bring it anywhere and navigate the two spaces in between. I'll skip this part. So actually, from my thesis project, the Tactility of Light project, we got invited by Cake Theatre to participate in this Running with Strippers series, where for that particular year, they invited fresh grads from my course to collaborate with an experienced artist or an established practitioner who has been in the industry for a while. And so that they wanted to see what can come off of this cross collaborations. So, so I got introduced to Andy from Art Factory as well as Stevie, who was at Art Factory. And then we collaborated on this work called Wave 1.0, where I wanted to work with experienced lighting designer, or I wanted to find out more of the process behind putting up shows or the technical production between live events. So for my end, my contribution would be to develop the interactive device used for this installation. Okay. So when talking about the concept of the work, we wanted to explore the idea of presence, because it was during a time where it was post-COVID, so the nightlife scene has been on standstill for a while, and it was a time where social distancing was something that was enforced in our life. And at that moment, I think things only opened up for art installations. So we had this platform, and we wanted to see whether through technology, how do we convey a sense of presence in this era of isolation. So the haptic device, or something that is wearable, is very, it actuates the feedback directly on your body. And using the same mechanism as the gloves, we wanted to see if in an immersive light space, whether we can replace the presence of other people through this wearable device. So we conceptualize Wave 1.0 as an immersive light and sound installation where visitors get to wear the haptic vest and walk around the space to feel the different light on their bodies. So actually, the title wave, why the first letter is bracketed is actually, it's a play on the word wave, and also while also referring to like the felt vibrations of light and sound. So this is some behind the scenes, which allowed me to learn a bit more about what goes on behind the productions of putting up immersive installation. And also, when it comes to wearable devices, there are some things to consider, such as like how do we facilitate the operations of wearing such devices, especially when it comes to a very specific instructive device. Okay, maybe I can play a short video of Wave 1.0. So another feature on the haptic vest is that there's actually a distance sensor on the vest itself that is a small little gimmick where it's connected to this LED matrix that gets triggered when somebody or a body or object comes into 1 meter distance from your body. So it's also a play on the social distancing rules at that moment. But actually, any object that comes into your radius would trigger it. So not only other humans, but light objects in the space as well. So it was just something to play around. So luckily enough for us, like the Running with 𝘓𝘓𝘂𝙱𝙴 series was quite experimental, and they allow us to develop or like work with a lot of ideas and play. So why it's wave 1.0 is because, okay, maybe I'll skip this part. So towards the end, there is a bit of intense strobing in this immersive installation. Okay. So actually, there is Wave 2.0, which we used the collaborative project to then apply for Singapore Art Week. So we presented Wave 2.0 in 2022 in Center 42. It's blue bungalow, a 2-story blue bungalow on 42 Waterloo Street. I believe now it's called 42 Waterloo. So there is a black box on the second level of the space, and so that is where the work was situated. And because we felt 1.0 was a very work in progress work, and that's why we wanted to develop on both ends, the haptic part of the wearable devices, and also the narrative of the light and sound in the space to present a more finished or rather developed experience. So we played a lot with the idea of like the connectivity between human, technology, and environment. So in some sense, that a lot of the narratives took inspiration from like nature, or like what is the relationship between nature and technology. And also on the haptic end of things, we really wanted to make the viewer like an active viewer. So it's really an exploratory process when they're in the space. There is no rules as to how you should experience the space. It should be a very intuitive process. So we tried to make the 2.0 version of both the glove and the vest as seamless as possible. So as you can see now, the gloves here did without the bag. And we also developed the next version of the vest. So I'll elaborate a bit more. So previously the vest for 1.0, I used the Arduino, which is actually limited in the number of outputs there are. So we could only connect it essentially to 6 points on the body. So you're only receiving 6 haptic feedback on your body. But actually your skin doesn't work that way. There are a lot of mechanoreceptors on your skin, and that's why even when an object is touching you, you feel it, and not only on the fingertips or your palm where you do more active exploration. So I collaborated with my electrical engineering friend to develop a custom PCB that allows us to increase the number of vibration units per device, essentially allowing us to create like a haptic fabric in some sense. So this is increasing the sensitivity of what you can receive across your skin over a bigger surface area for the vest. And it's quite sensitive to the point where if you use like a torchlight to draw a circle, you can feel it on your back. Yeah. So it's a lot more sensitive compared to the previous version. So I actually have, it's not hooked up at the moment, but this is just to show you how the units are connected together to run across the entire body of your back. Yep. Maybe I'll just play the documentation video. I'll just skip the first part. So this project actually allowed us, because it was across Art Week, so we have allowed us to see how people essentially with the addition of a device or like the gloves and the vest, how they would go about or interacting with light through this new additive device. So it's actually interesting to see how it's intuitive enough for people to understand that there is a reaction or feedback, and then thus they will be able to play around in the space as they will like. Yeah, so we received like some feedback after the installations, or some interesting questions was that like, oh, we felt like differently about the purple color. I mean, when it's a different color, it felt different. But actually it's not programmed to feel different for colors. So it's also about how you see or experience certain things. There might be different like subtleties in the position of your hand, and thus you feel differently. So that talks a bit more about how you perceive what you sense. Okay, so I'll take a quick pause here. Initially, there is like a demonstration part of it where like you can try the gloves. But I think it's really up to you if you want to try it, or you can approach me at the end to try the gloves. It's like own time, own target kind of thing. Anybody want to volunteer? Actually, it's nothing. It's yeah. Oh, okay. You can try. Is it better to do now? Yeah. If you want, like anybody can come and try, and then. Okay. So this is actually it works on any light, any quality of light. But I have here like a little bulb. So actually, okay. So over here, what you can do is like you can try touching the light. Yeah. Do note that these gloves are like 3 years old. So like some of the yeah. Actually, you can just try to. No.
Oh.
Yeah.
That was going to be one of my questions. Was why not push it so that maybe the reaction is not necessarily comfortable?
Then it's more like punishment.
I'm getting some ideas about you.
Left, I didn't know.
This one is
So left.
Oh.
You designed these and fabricated these as well?
yeah. So I actually had to sew every motto on the glove. So can you imagine how much work it went into this?
You have a team to help you.
Very fortunately, like I collaborated with Art Factory, so shop is from Art Factory as well. So, but Art Factory helped us with the technical production of the installation, and then but Andy was also participating as an artist to conceptualize this work. So like actually any source of light would work. Yeah. So actually because this is sort of a direct light source, so when you go near it, it feels like it feels like a sphere. So it's combined with the action of grabbing something and you're getting nearer to the light, you actually feel the harder vibration. So it tricks your mind into thinking you're holding something solid. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I work with that too. You can try. Yeah, but it's because it's less intense, so it might be a bit lesser. Actually, because the projector is quite high lumens, right?
You got your wish. It's really uncomfortable.
You wanted to put it with noise as well.
Noise. Oh, so your hand.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, you can just put. Yeah, thank you.
Are there any other questions at this point that you all might want to ask?
How much power is needed to power up the haptic device? Like, you are using a battery or?
Yeah, so the first version we used, I bought like these lithium-ion batteries from like Sim Tower, the kind that you can charge, the blue ones. And then this one, because actually it doesn't take a lot of power to run a light sensor and a haptic board. So it depends on how many units you're connecting. So why this can fit into a small box, because it uses a very small lithium-ion battery. You just have to keep charging it. So it's chargeable, and that's why it can survive until like now, 3 years from the installation, 4 years actually from the installation. While for the vest, we use larger batteries, and the larger lithium-ion batteries are a bit more dangerous and volatile. That's why I never charge them after so long. So that's why this is just a display piece.
I have another curiosity is the relationship between the music and also the environment. So is it a composed to go along with the light? How does it also affect the sensory perception? Yeah.
Yes, sound-wise, we actually worked with a sound designer, Joel, for this particular work. And I think he worked very closely with Andy and Stevie to basically compose or orchestrate the light and sound. And because it is an immersive structure, the speakers are located like above and also on the is it on the structures itself? Mostly above. And then also because of the black box that we were using, they had a DNB system, which was in the ceiling truss, located in the ceiling truss. And then we actually made use of the DNB technology, which allows you to equalize sound. So wherever you stand within the space, you get a very distributed and clear distribution of sound within the space. Yeah. Okay. And speaking of sound, so actually we had wave 3, yeah. Maybe, but maybe we'll call it a different name. Yeah. So like, I think haptic is something that I always have fall back upon, but I will share a bit more about the different explorations.
Maybe work. Sorry, excuse me. I'm Jamie, in case anyone wants to know. Have you thought about working around broader parts of the electromagnetic spectrum and not just a visible light? I'm inspired by. I watched 𝙬𝙬𝚂𝙱𝙴𝙷𝙬𝙬 talk one time about his magnetic cranial stimulation and treating humans like robots and having them mechanized by his signal input, which was just mind-blowing.
Is it like something like the one where they can control the cockroach?
It was stimulating, so using magnets to stimulate your cranium in your brain, but doing it on the motion part, so your arm would move, but you're not moving it, you're moving it because he's sending a signal to your brain.
Yeah,
so that's another.
I maybe don't know that particular technology.
It's magnetism rather than visible light, see, but still part of the light spectrum.
Yeah,
just curious.
Yeah, I think, but somebody told me before about EMG sensor, which measures like the signals from your muscle.
Yes.
Yeah, so it might be the opposite. But basically, my friend was working on this also exoskeleton glove that it's meant for rehabilitation of stroke patients if they lose a particular feeling in, let's say, their forearm, and then they will have another sensor connected to maybe a different part of their body for them to train the control of this exoskeleton using a different part of their body. So something like that, but not really related to the exploration of light, but maybe something that is maybe something practical use of such haptic technology is that sometimes they use it, let's say, as a sensory replacement for the visually impaired.
I was about to ask exactly. I was asking, help me understand what red feels like. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So like sometimes, I think they did this experiment before where they mapped out. It's not really a direct experience, but they mapped out like the layout of a space using vibration motors on somebody's part of the body, so they can sort of understand the spatial layouts before they navigate the space, something like that. So there's a lot of like interchangeability between the different modalities that we can touch on with the possibility of like technology. Yeah, it's about how you apply it. Yeah. Nice. So last time when we were talking about like touching light, we talked about like touching sound, things like that. Yeah. So it's like anything that you can receive data from, it's a possibility. And then it just has to make sense in the design of your interactive system or whatever you want to
Yeah.
propose. Yeah.
And I won't hog it. It's just that it was so fun to do. I met an ST engineering guy who had a haptic system based around hydraulics. So it was a basic pneumatic, sorry. So it was fluids rather than actuators.
Yes,
But yeah,
yes.
holding a virtual human heart to see if it was healthy or not. So they're putting that into healthcare. And that was
Yeah.
cool.
Thank you. Okay. So continuing from the thread of Johan's question about sound is that because we had the space, the installation space, and we had the fixtures in the space, and it's been a while since, in 2022, since they allowed for live events, we decided to have a spin-off called Oscillation that it's a music live gig. Yeah. Okay. I'll just share some photos. I won't elaborate more. So we wanted to play with this immersive performance space of sorts. So we had musicians, drum and synth duo, Slow Talk, sound media artist 𝙼𝙸𝚂𝙱𝙴𝙷𝙬𝚂𝙯 and 𝘠𝑦𝑜𝑛 situated in different parts of the room. So audiences, they had to sit like 1 meter apart, but then different parts of the live performance, they had to turn their body around, and then throughout the performance, they are immersed in the lights and also the sound from the DNB speaker. So it was a nice treat to have to see what possibilities you can do in an installation space. Yep. Okay. So I'll move on to the next body of work. This work is actually called Vortex. It was also for another edition of Running with Strippers, and this is in 2023. This one was called The Strange Beautiful Thing Was Within Reach. And it was this work was a collaboration between myself and Andy. And we wanted to explore the concept of like a vortex, which is actually a phenomenon from nature. So it's taking inspiration from a tornado. This audio-visual work explores like the evolution of like visual speed and also temporal frequencies from the sound. And then we wanted to explore the possibilities of like the visual and sonic movements in creating a experiential space. So this it's more about the play and rhythms of this LED volumetric sculpture. Okay, maybe I'll move in. Yeah. So for this work, we also collaborated with 𝘓𝘪𝘂, who is also a sound engineer and sound designer, and we basically play around with the movements of light and sound to trigger a sense of disorientation. So we play a lot with qualities of like visual and sonic acceleration in different intensities to create a performance, looping audiovisual work that will hypnotize the viewer. So this work is really about seeing whether we can take certain qualities from nature and see if in a technological format, like how it is designed to impact your senses. Okay, maybe it's a bit easier if I show some videos. So actually, even though it's a light work, I did the programming of the LEDs on Touch Designer. So it was actually my first time trying something on Touch Designer for light control. Previously, when I did tactility of light, I did very simple control of the lighting fixtures that was within the space. And then for Wave and 1.0 and 1.2, I had the help of the Art Factory team. So this time was an experiment or a challenge for myself. So this is actually a 3D simulation, and we mapped the movements or through this process called pixel mapping. We played with certain patterns and speed developed within Touch Designer, and then we mapped it onto a LED volumetric structure. So I think this was quite a large-scale project for the amount of time that we had, because I think, sorry, okay. maybe I'll come back here later, but I'll show. Oh, okay. So the good thing about Touch Designer is that it allows us to do like 3D visualizations and then also run the DMX protocol directly to the volumetric structure. And also this is a multi-channel sound, so there are like 4 speakers at the bottom of the volumetric structure. So for this particular one, basically the process is we can see how I can use certain data from the sound and relate it to light. So this one, I was given the movement of sound across the speakers and I linked it to the speed of the lights. So if you can hear, there is 2 type of sounds and it sounds like it's rotating at different speed. So this is how we tried to link it to the design of the movement of light as well. So this is some behind the scenes. Yeah, so it was a very painful process of, if I'm not wrong, on the inner ring there were 88 LED strips, and then on the outer ring there were 88 times 2. So it was, we used many ArtNet controllers and also many power supplies, and then we had to work out the technical aspects of mapping it right. So if you see over here, this is a test to. So this wasn't wired properly, but it was quickly rectified. Okay. I think, if I'm not wrong, we had about like a 4-day time frame for both the setup of the hardware and also the software programming on my end. So I was helping out with the hardware in the day, and then at night I was doing the programming for the lights because it was more efficient for me to do the programming when I see the lights being up, and then I can adjust like certain speeds. So I think whether we did plan, and then we did. In the studio, I did do a prototype of just 8 LED strips. And then only in the space, then we had the space and the time to like put it all up and then try to connect it. And then we could also, because we had a big team, fortunately, so we had the time and also their expertise to rectify anything that was on the spot. So it was a very fulfilling process, actually. Yeah. I don't know if I can do it again, though. I don't remember anything, though. Okay. Yeah. Oh, this is a short version of. So there were actually 5 different components for like a direction for the light and sound. So okay. So very fast, quickly, the five components. Like the first one was more of like cosmos, so or like points in moving in space. Oh, this is the long version. Okay, I'll just play it and talk through. Okay. So this one, the sound data was actually linked to the number of points. So if you can hear like an increase in volume, that would correlate to a burst of the points in the space. So we also played a lot with direction. So the movements of creating like variety in the movements where the one in the inner ring is going in the clockwise and then the one outer is going in the anti-clockwise. This is how we create like some differentiation so that. And then for the second one, it was more linking a light. So actually we heard feedback that it felt like a nuclear reactor, even though I don't really know what a nuclear reactor would feel like. Yeah. And then for the third one was playing with this rotating line that increased in the periodicity, and then eventually it like built up into the fourth component, which actually is the one that I shared previously, linking like the rotation of, the speed of rotation for both light and sound, so that you can, so it really feels disorienting. So the fourth one is actually my favorite. And then like after disrupting people's senses, then this is like the last part is something more zen with the sound of like the, what's it called, healing bowls. Yeah, so that people can at least get a rest from the intense light and sounds. Yeah. Okay. So I think that was the second body of work where it wasn't so much interactive per se. It was more a test on the visual and sonic design meant to convey a certain experience within a space. Okay, so for continuing on the thread of like wearable devices, I participated in the 𝙬𝙸𝚂𝙱𝙴𝙷𝙸 as a collaborator. I wasn't an applicant because my team members was in this project called MAX, which is called Modular Action and Reaction Control System. They wanted to develop a board that was improved Arduino to help artists create works that were modular and allows for multiple wireless control and data communication. So I think this project was about making it, streamlining certain data control or data sending and the sending of signals. So for this project, I used their board to develop this work called Moving Heads. It started off as a joke because like the moving head is called a moving head beam. It's a beam light. Then I just thought, why don't the moving head light can move like an actual moving head? So it's a wearable device meant for like performers or dancers to use to control a moving head fixture. So it was actually a kind of a simple concept. Okay. So actually this is I then was invited by this underground collective called Strange Weather to do the lighting design for one of their live events, which is a party. And this was at 𝘓𝘓𝘓𝘂𝙗𝑚𝑎. And in this particular event, they invited an Indonesian band called 𝘓𝘓𝘂𝙗𝙗𝙗. So they do more experimental, instrumental music combined with electronic. And they also collaborated with this movement group based in Singapore called Ragaura. So I think they are part of the Singapore Buto Collective. So as part of the performance, I was involved in the design and the live programming of the lights, as well as the triggering of the moving head devices. So it became one component of their performance where they put on the device and then it controls the lights as part of the scenography. Okay. So this one. So this is how the installation looks like from the back. So actually through this project, we realized this wearable device for performers actually restricts the movement of the performer itself. So it felt there were limitations with the interactivity of this device. So for the Performing Arts 𝙬𝙸𝚂𝙱𝙴𝙷𝙸𝙬𝙳 in 2024, we applied with this project called Theories of Motion. So it's a collaboration between movement artist 𝘬𝙗𝙗𝙗, interactive designer, which is myself, sound designer 𝘓𝘪𝘂𝙗𝙗, a performance and technical director Andy, and also embedded system designer Justin, who we all worked together before, but we came together in this capacity over this, I think, 4 to 6 month long lab in collaboration with Esplanade to see how we can come together to extend the human body to create performative expression. So we used the same sensor essentially as the Moving Head project, which was a gyroscope, but then we applied it to different parts of the mover's body. Yeah. And then we also, it was more of a collaborative process. So 𝙼𝙬𝚂, who has many years of practicing in movement, we asked him what was the way he categorized movement, and even though there are very well-known notations, with his own practice, he must have some way that he used to define and also perhaps teach the way he moves to his students. So after talking to 𝙼𝙬𝚂, and he broke down movement into different dimensions. So dimension 0 is the point, dimension 1 is the line, dimension 2 plane, and then dimension 3 volume. And as he's performing these movements, we are extracting the data and then filtering and making design choices for both the sound and the visuals on how it is presented, and then it was put together in an interactive, performative performance lecture of sort, and so that it can all interplay at once to see if there's any potential for like a expression. But after experiencing with the base dimensions, we realized that actually 𝙼𝙬𝚂 was the one that actually mentioned that there is a dimension 4 that is something more emotive about performance and cannot be just broken down into the raw data, and also something that is very abstract or subtracted. So we actually use certain elements, at least this is the elements for the visual direction, to demonstrate what we would all perceive the fourth dimension to be, using a combined, how do I say this? Like a, okay, I'll just show the video. I'm sorry, I think there's an issue with the sound. Okay, I'll just skip this part then. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about this body of work? Sorry, to answer your question, I think
Bluetooth connected.
this presentation was part of an industry sharing. So it's a cumulative process, but we did had some workshopping sessions as an internal team to frame how we would like to present this performance lecture. And also it was a lot of the experimenting with the, we put the sensors on 𝙼𝙬𝚂 for one of the sessions, and then we collected how he moved the data so that me and Rong Zhao can take home the data as a recorded, and then we can play around with how we want to express that. So we recorded data per the different dimensions, and then we then took it back to work remotely on how we best present the visuals and also for the sound part. Let me see. Yes, okay. So for this one, the placement of the sensors was also something that we discussed. So there's actually 3 sensors on each arm, one on his forearm, one on his upper arm, and then one on his shoulder, essentially trying to capture any points of rotation of the joints. And then there was also one on his upper body. For this time around, we didn't develop a device per se, so it wasn't wearable. It was just held on to 𝙼𝙬𝚂 by tape. So we wanted it to be as seamless as possible so that it doesn't obstruct any movement. Yeah. No, yeah. Yes.
Two questions. The first being, was there plans to create some level of like a codified language for you guys? And the second question is, are there any plans to do more of this? Because 𝙼𝙬 is an amazing contemporary dancer, but then that's just one form of moving, right? So yeah, like I just wanted your insight on that.
Yeah. Actually, that was the starting point. It was about notating movement in a way that we can understand, because coming from like a like maybe the interactive design, we don't have any understanding of motion except for like XYZ, which is what we understand of the gyroscope, which is this the gyroscope sensor. So like that's how we quantify movement. But maybe it was quite informative for us as a team that there is the emotive, and maybe it's a different part of perception, right? It's like how you then understand or receive that emotive quality, which 𝙼𝙬 also touched upon in his fourth dimension. I'm sorry about the sound. I think it was a problem with the video itself. But actually this video, or this entire performance lecture, is online, posted by NAC on YouTube. Yeah, so actually I forgot most part of it, so I was watching it so that I could get reminded. That's why I can't really explain it that well. And then your second question was about, no, the first one was about the codified language. So what we've been telling NAC is, yes, we will continue this work like many times already. Okay, maybe not many times, but the team is right there. But there's always an intention. And actually, 𝙼𝙬 met up with Justin at an event, and then Justin told me that actually 𝙼𝙬 is very keen to continue on this conversation, because it was because the nature of the lab is that it's meant for experimentation. So it's the front part of it, and then the final form of it was through industry sharing. So it wasn't a finished, complete work. We just shared our process and our thoughts behind the experimentation that we have done. So I think if there's ever the opportunity to expand, perhaps like Dimension 4, or like maybe develop a sensor or use different forms of movement, we can come together and then talk again more. Yeah, we're open to the ideas.
Alina? Sorry, just on how
Okay.
how would you invest into the sensor-based capture of the movement, and would that dimension of having something physical and practical and that interaction with the artist and the performer, because now we've got different approaches which probably would yield the same insight of the movement without any device at all, based on sort of a media pipe and
like a
just media pipeline and machine language. Yeah, it's just. Yeah, so but that would almost remove a part of the process. You'd still get the result. Yeah. But I'm thinking that actually that would, but then there's almost you'd lose that contact with the performer in some way. Yeah,
actually, that's very interesting, because it always came up for us that this gyroscope and motion triggered visuals is not new. It's something that has already been done like maybe 20, 30 years ago, and there are so many new technologies like mocap that already has all the motion capture and like the interface all packed into one very pretty package that is meant to capture movement and then to be used in performance. So like, why are we then going back to this very low-tech gyroscope and then placing it on tape on performance? And then I think for us, I think no, it's okay. I think for us it was really about understanding. So because we don't have a background in movement, so it was us trying to filter and extract what was useful through this gyroscope sensor that is something very low tech, and then going back to the basics of just movement data through the X, Y, and Z. And then actually within the gyroscope, there are other forms of data that you can collect. So the rate of change, like acceleration. And actually one component of, I think, dimension. Yeah. Ah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we've made a cheaper or faster or more effective process because I've got no sensor. But I'm just curious because you almost want to stay low tech for the very
Yeah.
reasons you're saying.
I think it was how we then use each point of data on the performance body as a potential data for each item, at least on the visual side. So I think for dimension 4, there were like 8 sensors on his body, and then it corresponds to each ring on the visual. Yeah, so I think at least something very like something like breaking down, and then you can extract exactly what you want, which actually, now that I think about it and reflect, it's actually the way that I do things, especially when I'm doing live programming for lighting, which I'll talk about in a bit. So I don't use professional equipment like GrandMA, but then for every lighting installation that I do, I recode and reprogram a DMX controller on Touch Designer, which is then breaking down each lighting fixture into its channels again and then remapping it for each show that I do. So it's about being tedious. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, maybe I'll move on. Okay, I think maybe before I move into the last part of the sharing, I think the first 3 bodies of work, we talk a lot about interactive installations. And then I think going back to my background in interaction design, I think I wanted to sort of like have a bridge into the next component of creating live atmospheres, because that is then, there are differences in the setup when thinking in the setup of like something that is more exhibition over a longer period of time versus something more temporary for like lighting for raves. Most of the time it's like one night event. So going back to the first part of the sharing about the experiential perspective and how do I then extend what I know from interaction design into the conceptualizing of lighting design for raves. So I think something I kind of I read in this essay called Understanding Spaces and Places. I think they didn't talk about the experiential perspective, but more so the dynamics of interaction in the design of like technologically mediated environments. So what they want to talk about is more about the relationship between behavior and environment. It's not simply based on like a stimulus response mechanism that associates structural features of the space. You actually need to identify the cultural aspect of it and the experiential parts of it. So when we are designing like interaction design, it's like you have to think about the personal, social, cultural, and structural elements as well. And then I feel that these different aspects, it's relevant to how we think about how we experience space and movement. Yeah, okay, I will just move on into So I think going on into the work that I do with this queer collective called 𝘓𝘓𝘂𝙀𝑡𝑚𝑝𝑙𝑒. So I think maybe 2 years back they had a fellowship with Theatre Works, and they were allowed to run a series of raves in the space. They had a year-long fellowship. So I was glad that I had the opportunity to experiment with them. So I think the first version of the rave that was held at Theatre Works was called Father's Womb. And I developed this light installation as part of the lighting design called 10 Tropes. So maybe this is their poster. So I think in the first part, I think Jamie mentioned that 𝘓𝘓𝘂𝙀𝑡𝑚𝑝𝑙𝑒, there's another 𝘓𝘓𝘓𝑡𝑚𝑝𝑙𝑒 coming up, but they play very experimental hardstyle music, and they have very strong connections in Southeast Asia, so they always invite like a key like DJs, and then they also have their own collective as well. So I think maybe I'll just share a bit more about 10 tropes. So I think the considerations behind designing a set for like the set for like a DJ set or like performance, it's a bit more, I have to think a bit more conceptually about what I want to present in the space. So for this particular one, inspired by the key visual actually, by this, I designed this cave-like structure that houses 10 strobe lights. So the intention is to play with the intensity of the volumetric illumination and stroboscopic effects in a bid to trigger movement. So this is my very, so I have to work with what I have within this T-Works. So they have a lot of these riser units, and I was going back to hand drawing and also using Legos to then construct my stage, because I'm a bit lazy to draw it in 3D. So this is eventually how the stage looked like. And then this is when the lights are in. The original plan was for 16 strobes, but we ended up with 10. Okay, maybe I'll just share some videos about how it's spaced. I think these are very... Oh, sorry. Yeah. So I think I'll do less elaborating. I'll just play more videos for the end of the night. Oh, it's playing at the same time. But basically, sorry, very low quality video. Yeah, so what I did for these, the way I work for the live installations is that I would code my own UI for the lighting control specific to the installation on Touch Designer, because that is the way I understand how to control light. So versus professionally, if you use like a Grand MA console, they already have the lights mapped within the console. But for each time around, when I conceptualize a light installation for 𝙼𝙸𝚂𝙱𝙴𝙷𝙬𝚪, I will start from scratch, thinking of what light I want to use, and then mapping it onto Touch Designer itself, and then playing with the modularity. So actually, there are pros and cons with working with Touch Designer, because you get to break it down into the basic modules and you know exactly what you're trying to control. So during setup, I would have the lighting manual of each light on my screen, and then trying to map it and then play with it. But versus, let's say, I might be wrong, because I've only done a very brief intro course to the Grand MA console where you can code your presets and like, yeah, okay. Oh, okay, sorry. Let me just, okay. So I think with the first installation, like 10 strokes, I think it was interesting to see how with different movements and rhythms of light, it's meant to like trigger movement. So it's, I was quite surprised that people were not blinded by the intensities of light, but they still continue moving. So it's great to be young. Yeah. Yeah, so this is essentially how the atmosphere of it is like. And the light is very directly to the front line of defense, but they don't care. It's a good thing. Yeah, so just some experiential pictures, and then the second work that I did, collaboration that I did with 𝙼𝙸𝚂𝙱𝙴𝙷𝙬𝚪 was this work called Beams. So the first one was really using the light, using the light as an object or like part of the stage or the set design. But this one was more of exploring light as structures. I mean, making use of the architecture of the space where they had high ceilings and this truss. So I wanted to play with like these towering vertical structures. So it was for Little Fantasies Crystallis. So I think I use like 8 moving headlights to then play around with the different textures. Okay. And then of course to make the light solidify in the space, you have to use like haze or fog. Okay, I'll just start playing the videos. Yeah. So it's a lot about different effects or different movements of lights within the space. And then playing a lot with strobe because strobe is nice. Okay, so I think for the second edition of 𝘓𝘪𝘂 Temple, they also incorporate more performance space. So it was quite interesting to then have to illuminate the performer within a raised space. So that was an interesting task. Okay. And then lastly, the last one that I did with them was called Panopticon. It was in 2024. And I think I wanted to explore more of like the concept of a panopticon where the center stage, it's, I mean, the center point is the stage and then the lights are having, surrounding the performer. So this is basically the concept behind panopticon, which is playing around with the Legos again to create these towers. Panopticon? It's a prison. No. As in, it was a concept developed last time about surveillance. So this is the ideal version of a prison which used least manpower but highest amount of surveillance of all the prison cells around them. It's like you are on this constant state of like anxiety because you never know. But nowadays we are so desensitized to the CCTVs. Like there's 4 in this space, like 3, but I did not even notice. Maybe nobody is watching. Why Panopticon? Yeah.
It's like is that something that talks to your core style? You think, or you want to be?
Oh, maybe. I was talking to a friend recently, and basically, I think I like chaotic environments, but I like being calm in chaotic environments. Or maybe because I have, I am quite used or equipped to deal with my own chaos. So maybe that's why when it comes to overstimulation, like it doesn't really bother me that much. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Funny. Okay, so this is how it kind of looked, but there were some adjustments that we could have made, even though it tapped onto the concept of panopticon, right? The central stage was in the middle, so, and then people tend to stand in front of, sorry, this is just the light, type of light that we were using. Yeah, so. And then there were also performances as part of, like, one of the DJ sets, like she had an intro. Yeah. So actually one bad thing about this spatial layout is that everybody will crowd around the front of the stage, because like when it comes to DJ sets, there's always a front facing. So even though the intention was like everybody to be spread out in this circular radius, they sort of congregate in front of the DJ. But the initial concept was like wanting to remove the idea that like the DJ is the central point. But maybe we can explore again. Yeah. So I'll just quickly skip part and then we can move on to like Q&A. So with live programming, it's about really listening and then having to control it live. sometimes I'll just leave it on running and then I'll go outside for a break and then I'll come back. Yeah. Because actually, when we listen to sound and it's like of a high beat, we automatically make associations with the light already. So sometimes even though the light is of a certain, maybe a constant speed, we will automatically link it as it's synced, but sometimes it's not. Okay. And then I think with the idea of panopticon, it's really playing with about rotation also, so like movement, like circular movement of the different lights. Yep, so playing with like circular movement. Okay. I think we're coming to an end soon. All right. So just a quick end off is that even though we started off with like light as sensorium, actually what the main focus, or rather what I explore within my works, is more about recalibrating perception more than the focus on lighting itself. So maybe given my background in like interaction design, like what I like is finding the gaps between our sensory percepts. So like sometimes it's like, why do we find sound to be rough? And like, how do we then connect the dots? Or maybe it's all explained via the experiential perspective, but like it can't really be explained either. Okay, thank you.